Unlucky for Sam. Written by Kevin Eldon. Read by Simon Bird.
England, 1950. It was a different age. A sumptuous meal consisted of boiled cabbage and a piece of scrag end swimming in lumpy gravy. A rave night out was a game of dominoes in a pub smoky enough to guarantee an instant case of bronchitis, and the definition of hot sex was a quick grope down a dark alley, provided you went home immediately afterwards to scrub yourself raw with carbolic soap. But it wasn't all fun. Some people had their minds on less frivolous matters. Freshman Sam Jenkins was a very serious, academically minded fellow. It was fitting indeed that he'd just been accepted at the University of Scientific Objectivity, whose stern ethos was that the only true perception of the universe was something which was gleaned through provable, verifiable fact. A mile or so from the austere surroundings of the university lived a tiny old lady by the name of Dolly Coplington. Although 87-year-old Dolly had never married, she didn't live in her charming, tumble-down cottage alone. There was her little friend, Henry, her pet budgie for a start, and to supplement her meagre pension, she'd occasionally taken a lodger. Her last lodger had recently moved on to pastures new. And when Sam, answering Dolly's advert in the local newspaper, came to view the room, she found him to be a very presentable young man. She offered him the tenancy on the spot. And although the house was rather warm due to Dolly feeling the cold so keenly in her old bones, Sam accepted without demur. What Sam didn't realise was that although Dolly was a gentle, unassuming lady, she was rather superstitious. In fact, in the words of Stevie Wonder, Dolly Coplington was very superstitious. If, for example, she were in the garden, tending the graves of all the other little friends who had kept her company over the long years, and she happened to see a single magpie, just to be on the safe side, Dolly would take all of the actions recommended in such a situation. She'd look away and look back again. She'd blow a kiss. She'd salute. She'd put a hat on and then doff it. She'd turn around 3 times. And finally, if the bird was still there, she'd cheerfully cry out, "Good morning, Mr. Magpie, how's your lady wife?" And if, for another example, she ever encountered her neighbour, Mr. Cleet, she would immediately do a very big and very loud spit. This wasn't because she was a rude old lady. It's just that, as everyone knows, it's unlucky not to spit if you see a man wearing spectacles. And if, for a third example, she spotted a spider crossing the meal table, she would dance the rumba until it changed direction. Being a natural bookworm, it took some months for Sam to notice Dolly's strange behavioural quirks, but when he finally did, he found them faintly amusing, and then irritating, and finally, infuriating. One morning at breakfast, as he was trying to read a large book on some of the finer points of continuum mechanics, he could not help but notice Dolly scratching her scalp so that dandruff fell onto her cornflakes. Sam finally snapped. "Damn it, Miss Coplington," he thundered through a mouthful of grilled sausage. "What on earth are you doing?" "Why, Mr. Jenkins, sir," replied Dolly, triddingly. "I'm sprinkling dandruff over my cornflakes." "I can see that, but why?" "Well," she calmly replied, as if stating the obvious, "I had a dream about a chicken last night, and as you know, a dream about a chicken is a sure sign that a bad attack of chilblains is on its way. And as low worsens high, so high betters low." Her explanation delivered, she carried on scratching. Sam could take no more. "Mrs. Coplington," he said, rising from his seat, "I have never heard so much meaningless drivel in my entire life. There is not a shred of scientific evidence to support a single one of your ludicrous delusions. I shall prove to you beyond all possible doubt that your belief system is entirely and unconditionally baseless. Starting right now." And, spying through the window, a ladder leaning against a wall of a nearby house, Sam Jenkins strode out of Dolly's front door, across the street, and proceeded to walk repeatedly to and fro under the ladder. Mrs. Coplington breathlessly caught up with him outside. "Oh, no, sir," she quavered. "You mustn't do that. Walking under a ladder, that's terribly bad luck. Please stop it, I beg you." "Bad luck? Ha!" barked young Jenkins. "Why, you ridiculous old fool, there's no such thing." The next morning, Sam fell downstairs, from the very top to the very bottom. Clunk, clank, clunk, ending up in an ungainly heap, severely bruised and not a little concussed. Dolly was distraught. "Oh dear me, Mr. Jenkins, sir," she moaned after she'd given him a cup of hot sweet tea. "What a to-do! It's a wonder you didn't break your poor neck. It was all that walking under that ladder yesterday, you mark my words." "Oh, bilge and poppycock, you befuddled ninny," grimaced Sam through his aching jaw. "A mere accident. I was deep in thought about the paradoxes of material implication, and I merely missed my step." And with that, he threw his teacup at the mirror on Dolly's wall, causing it to shatter into hundreds of tiny pieces. "There," crowed Sam. "I've broken a mirror." "Ooh," he wheedled in a cruel and not strictly accurate impression of his aged landlady. "That'll be 7 years bad luck." "Well, I beg to differ. I beg to differ." The next morning, Sam had a rather serious accident on his bicycle, in which he ended up pitching headfirst into a workman's hole in the road. And whilst attending a lecture at the university, a faulty water tank in the attic above Sam's room caused a leak through the ceiling that utterly destroyed the 300,000-word dissertation on the monotonicity of entailment, which he had been obsessively and lovingly working on for many months. Poor Sam. Now sporting a neck brace, 2 black eyes, a fractured arm and various bruises, he began for the first time in his up until now entirely certain life to experience faint glimmerings of doubt. What if these recent mishaps were more than mere coincidence? Professor Horatio Lambkins, rector of the University of Scientific Objectivity, despised religion, spirituality, general otherworldliness, and indeed anything that could not be reduced to a sentence or two expressed in terms of pure logic. And when a somewhat shaken Sam Jenkins sat before him and explained the events of the last few days, he immediately sensed in his student a wavering of intellectual certainty. This, to the fiercely assured professor, was unacceptable and must be redressed immediately. The learned gentleman drew in a long breath, and for the next several hours he held forth. He lectured, hectored, ranted and panted. In short, he really gave Sam both bloody barrels, and so powerful was the sheer force of this verbal explosion that at the end of his protracted, blisteringly incandescent tirade, Sam's eyes were blazing with a new light of conviction, his scientific, empirical mojo fully and completely restored. And how? "Thank you, Professor," said Sam, wringing his master's hand. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have some irrationalities to confute." Striding confidently into Dolly's front parlour, Sam was just about to forcefully relay his newly revived scepticism to the wrinkly old woman when he noticed that she was quietly weeping. "What on earth is the matter with you now, Miss Coplington?" he inquired. "It's tomorrow, Mr. Jenkins, sir. Tomorrow is," and here her voice sank to a tremulous whisper, "Friday the 13th. "And?" inquired Sam, scoffingly. "Why, it's the unluckiest day of the whole year," she sobbed. "Oh, that is just perfect," he whooped. "Finally! The ideal opportunity to free your enfeebled mind from the prison of your revolting ignorance. Tomorrow marks the death of superstition in this house." After Mrs. Coplington, to the accompaniment of Sam's cruel laughter, had taken to her room with a severe panic attack, Sam rushed to the local library and distastefully consulted every book he could find on superstitious beliefs, specifically those pertaining to things one expressly should not do on Friday the 13th. That night Sam slept the deep, sweet sleep of the impenetrably self-assured. Friday the 13th dawned, bright and sunny. "Hardly apocalyptic weather," mused Sam, yawning widely without covering his mouth. The first of many acts of planned superstitious transgressions. Once he had dressed in clothing that was entirely green and had superglued a number of upside-down horseshoes to his jacket, he donned a headband of peacock feathers and went downstairs, deliberately crossing past Mrs. Coplington as she was coming up. He sang before breakfast, and after breakfast he burnt his boiled eggshells, took his shoes off, put them on the table, and then proceeded to cut his toenails. "Hey there, you credulous booby!" he shouted upstairs to the pitifully moaning old lady, who was cowering in her room, clutching a 4-leaf clover, a rabbit's foot, an amber crystal, and a wishbone. "It's not even 8 o'clock in the morning, and according to your way of thinking, I've already amassed enough bad juju to spontaneously combust. And believe me, I've only just begun. Now," he muttered to himself, consulting a long list, "time to go into the garden and kill a bee." And with that, he stood up, and felt very odd indeed. Swaying slightly, he slumped heavily back into his seat. His head spinning, Sam Jenkins slipped slowly into the inky blackness of unconsciousness. The darkness gradually lightened. Sam felt himself rising queasily out of a very deep, clammy well. What's happened?" he croaked. "Am I ill?" "Oh, Mr. Jenkins, sir, I think you are. Dreadfully." Sam made to rise from his bed, but found he could not. He looked down. To his amazement, he saw that he was tightly bound, held fast to the bed by coil after coil of thick rope. What is this?" Sam asked weakly. "I've had to tie you down, Mr. Jenkins," said Dolly sorrowfully. "But why?" Oh, for the same reason I put oil down at the top of the stairs and flooded the water tank and loosened the back wheel of your bicycle. That was you? Oh, yes, sir. That was me. But why? Why? Said Dolly, sounding really rather surprised at the question. Well, to show you just how dangerous it can be to pay no heed to superstition. Particularly when you're living in the same house as someone who's not only superstitious, but also happens to be a homicidal maniac. A gasped Sam, falteringly. Sidal maniac, said Dolly, helpfully. Yes, I had to show all the others, too. Whimpered Sam, feebly. Others, continued Dolly. May they rest in peace. Oh, and don't worry, I'll make sure you get a nice spot with them all in the garden. Once that nasty poison I mixed into your marmalade has done its work, and you've paid a little visit to the furnace in the cellar, I've got your little box and cross all ready for you. Wheezed Sam, slowly slipping away into blank oblivion, or the fires of hell, depending on your beliefs. Poor Sam. Well, actually, not poor Sam. He was a bit of an arse, wasn't he? But it does make you think, though, doesn't it? There is absolutely no doubt at all that it really, really doesn't pay to be absolutely certain about anything. Probably.